All right, welcome. Hello, everyone. I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us today. For those of you who are watching live, there are lots of Zoom meetings that you could attend, but you chose to attend this one, so thank you for that. To begin, I think it's really important in this time of digital connection to reinforce our physical, spiritual connections to one another as artists and arts workers and people in our relationship to one another and the world around us. First, I'm going to read the Toronto Arts Council's Land Acknowledgement Statement. As we gather today, we want to acknowledge the diversity of the First Peoples of this area and recognize the territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. Today, Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island and around the world, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work, to live, and to meet on this territory. My name is Liza Mattimore. I am wearing a black shirt and my hair is pulled back in a bun. I identify as a cis, straight, white woman, and I use the pronouns she and her. I was born on the traditional lands of the Ohlone of Northern California in what is colonially known as San Francisco. I'm an immigrant to Canada, though an invisible one, with the privileges that other newcomers to Canada are not afforded. Although I knew nothing of the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Covenant, Toronto Treaty 13, or the Williams treaties when I arrived here, I've come to know that Toronto has been the site of human activity for 10,000 years or more. And I want to acknowledge the diversity of the First People, both recognized and unrecognized, who have called Tkaronto home. This territory continues to be the home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And as a settler on this territory, I have benefited significantly from colonial culture that has overseen genocide, systemic oppression, and the exploitation of Indigenous peoples, Black people, people who identify as differently abled, poor people, and those who identify as gender or sexually non-conforming. This program is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm proud to be here today as the Strategic Programs Manager at the Toronto Arts Council to tell you about the Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program. I'm going to ask each of my colleagues today, that's Amy who's joining us, to do a brief intro themselves, if you're comfortable, Amy.
Hello, my name is Amy. I'm the interpreter for today with a team of other interpreters. It's great to work with everyone today. Thank you, Liza.
Thank you very much, Amy. I want to say that I'm happy to provide the information that is presented in these slides to anyone by email after the presentation. Not going to be reading directly from all of the slides in every case, but if there's anyone who would benefit from having them, I'm happy to send those out. Toronto Arts Council is divided into two funding categories, the discipline funding and strategic funding. There's discipline strategic funding tends to be dance, theater, community arts, Indigenous specific programs. And the strategic programs of which the Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement falls under. This is primarily important for applicants because generally organizations and collectives are restricted to one grant per calendar year from each of the funding envelopes. There are a couple of exceptions, Open Doors 2021, Digital Solutions Incubator, and mentors who participate in our mentorship programs. They have some specific requirements and eligibility, and I'm happy to answer questions about that if you email me or ask at the end of the session. I'm just going to reiterate that you can find guidelines for any program that you're interested in on our website. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. Under the grant programs, excuse me, I want to send this to everyone. Under the grant programs tab, you can find information about all of the various grant programs. that the Toronto Arts Council offers. Today, we're going to be talking about the Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program. I'm going to be telling you about some important dates, information you may need to determine if you're eligible to apply, and how to submit your application. Hopefully, we'll answer any questions that you have, and I'll try to keep up with the chat. Some colleagues there, Tamaj, can answer questions as well. And if you don't have an opportunity to connect with us during the session, you can always email me. My email is directly linked on the program page, Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement. And you can find my name and email on the TAC website related to this program and all the other programs that I manage. Most important thing to know right now for this program is the deadline is June 15th, 2021. What is this program all about? The Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program is a program that's designed for nonprofit organizations, that includes arts organizations, but other service organizations as well. They're structured as nonprofits, as well as artist collectives that engage, projects that engage newcomer and refugees through arts programming. Provides a set amount of funding, $20,000. This amount may represent 100% of the total project budget or a portion therein. Organizations and collectives must be located in the City of Toronto. Post office box address cannot be used to meet this requirement, and organizations with regional offices outside of Toronto must operate in the City of Toronto for at least 1 year prior to the deadline. Collectives are defined as 2 or more artists working together under a group name, either on a single project or on an ongoing basis. Collectives of 2 artists must both be City of Toronto residents, and for collectives with more than 2 artists, the majority of members must be City of Toronto residents. Artists must be professional. A professional is someone who's developed their skills through training and practice, is recognized by artists working in the same traditions or styles, actively practices their art, seeks payment for their work, and has a history of public presentation. I think that it's important to add that the Toronto Arts Council recognizes that there are systemic barriers which may impact newcomers in particular in their ability to identify as a professional artist. And there is discretion in the ways in which we interpret that. If you have questions about eligibility for a particular artist or someone that you're hoping to work with, please reach out to me. For the most part, we want to support you in your efforts to engage individuals who identify as artists, and we're happy to talk more about that with you. I think it's important to talk a little bit about the projects and how they'll be assessed. So projects are assessed in accordance with the following criteria. Demonstrated involvement of newcomer community members and professional artists in the design and implementation of the project. So it's not enough that your project is reaching out to newcomer communities. It also needs to incorporate the input and design of newcomers who are going to have a leading role in your project. The artistic merit of the proposed project and its innovation in form, interpretation, and/or content. The quality of experience the project will provide and its capacity to support the integration and inclusion of newcomers and/or refugee individuals to Toronto. The applicant's strong demonstrated experience engaging with newcomers.
Liza,
Yes.
just for the interpreter,
Yeah.
so you said that it had to be having a newcomer or a refugee as in a leading role, and then the second point was that
The artistic merit of the proposed project.
the artistic merit, and then after that,
The quality of experience the project will provide. And its capacity to support the integration and inclusion of newcomers and refugee individuals.
okay, thank you. And then the next one.
The applicant's strong demonstrated experience engaging with newcomers and/or refugee communities. the quality of their outreach strategy for this project.
Perfect, thank you.
And then finally, the financial viability of the proposed project and the ability of the applicants to carry it out.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, who should apply? I think the most important thing is that if you have not applied to this program before, it's a good idea to be in touch with me directly. We can talk about your program, talk about the partnerships that you are hoping to form, and I can give you some advice about this program and what we're really hoping to fund. Project activities must include the collaboration of professional artists and newcomers and or refugee community members. So that's where we were talking again about professional artists who also identify as newcomers. And applicants should remember that it's important to have a strong track record of engagement with newcomers or refugee communities, and to demonstrate a viable administrative and financial plan for achieving your goal of the proposed project. If you yourself as an organization don't have those relationships, it's important that you seek out partnerships with organizations that do, and those can really strengthen your application. Projects for which funding is requested also must take place in the City of Toronto. Okay, I think we're going to go over the timeline quickly, and then we're going to take a short 5-minute break. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more. So, important dates. We've already spoken about the deadline, June 15th. Just a little bit under a month away. So if you are hoping to apply to this program, you have a project idea, please reach out to me. Or if you've applied to this program in the past and been unsuccessful, we still have time to talk about your application. It's important that project activities do not start before October 1st. You will be notified about the success of your application in September. And you don't want to have any activities in your application that are going to confuse panelists or give anyone pause about the timeline of your activities. So all activities must start after October 1st, and the project must have a minimum 3 months in duration. So whatever activities you're proposing, they need to extend for a minimum of 3 months. You will identify in your application the timeline of your activities, and the end date that you articulate in your application will be incorporated into your successful application. And 3 months after you identify the end of your activities, your final report will be due. Projects need to be completed within 2 years of the date of your notification letter, so that'll be the letter you get sometime in September. Just add that this program, like all TAC granting programs, is very competitive. And because
I'm sorry, Liza, your previous comment about a letter that you'd receive in September, do you mind reiterating that statement?
Yes, so you, the deadline is June 15th. You'll be notified about your successful application in September, successful or unsuccessful. You'll be notified in September. And then activities may start sometime after that. And at the end of your activities, you'll have a report that is due. Support material is a critical component of the application. All applicants are required to submit an example of the artist's recent work that is relevant to the project. As I mentioned, it's important that you have artists in lead roles. And so these examples will help strengthen your application. At least one example should be from the past 2 years. Previously funded applicants should submit new support material. And the support material should illustrate both the quality and nature of the artist's practice, the artist's capacity to work in a community context relevant to the proposed project. Due to the number of applicants submitted to this program, peer assessors normally will spend about 3 minutes or less per application viewing support material. So keep it in mind that panelists may not see your work in its entirety. If there is an opportunity for you to provide timestamps for specific or particularly relevant components, please do so in the description. You can upload media files to TAC to the portal, or you can provide a link to your files. Remember that if you provide links and they require passwords, that you should either remove those passwords or provide other instructions so that panelists may view the material. For uploading, please be sure that you review the file types that are accepted in the guidelines. Okay, let's talk about some past projects. Now, this is really the most fun part. The Arab Community Centre of Toronto has had a program running for a number of years that has been funded through this project. The Arab Community Centre of Toronto is a settlement and community organization that works with newcomer youth, design projects to provide culturally sensitive media art creation training. They run for a relatively small group of people, 10 young newcomer youth from Arab and African refugee communities. Girls and boys from the ages of 13 to 19 participate in a summer series of workshops. In this second year, Media Arts for Newcomers, the Media Arts program at the Arab Community Centre of Toronto, this is its second year, sorry. It's been a fantastic program that consists of a number of photography workshops as well as video development workshops. So they really, they work with 2 artists from newcomer communities, one who primarily works in photography and the other who works in film. They lead a series of workshops with the young people, and the project culminates in an exhibit. They also have an opportunity for the youth to access a number of one-on-one mentorship sessions with artists, approximately 40 hours each. So it's a really involved project, engaging both newcomer artists and also working within newcomer communities. And as I said, this program has been running for a couple of years. Another project that has been funded through this program is from Music from Hope. So Music from Hope is an organization that uses music as a creative tool to boost creativity, improve compassionate communication, build confidence to work in groups, and collaborate on plans and projects. Their project involved 10 community music making workshops in collaboration with another organization. And they provided newcomer children creative music making experiences, improving social skills, dealing with trauma, and talking about social barriers. So this is an artist collective, and they use music as an activity primarily aimed at young children from different backgrounds as a way of opening up and engaging and having fun and connecting with community. Their program last year they had 10 music workshops, and they divided them into a couple of different sets. Each workshop was about 45 minutes, and they averaged about 35 participants. The series of workshops focused on, again, newcomer children in Toronto, ages 7 to 13. So here again, this is a fantastic program that was funded through the Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program. Now, projects that are involving deaf, mad, and disabled artists are also able to apply for additional TAC grant funding by completing the accessibility expense section of the application and providing the included requisite information in their budget. It's important to note that a TAC accessibility grant will provide up to a maximum of $5,000 towards accessibility costs for artists incurred during the project. So these costs are not audience focused, they are related to your artist's needs. Accessibility costs can include, but are not limited to, ASL interpretation, audio description, closed captioning, communications assistant, and attendant care. Similarly, we also provide applicants who identify as deaf, mad, and disabled and need support to complete their grant application. You may access up to $500 per year to cover the cost of assistance for a service provider. And to do so, you would contact me directly before the deadline and make arrangements, and Toronto Arts Council will pay your service provider directly. So this is specifically related to completing your application. So if you represent an organization who's hoping to apply to this grant fund and you need some additional support in completing the application, please do reach out to me. I'm happy to support you in any way I can. Here we've got some just really basic grant writing tips. These are not necessarily specific to this program, but they are generally good practice for grant applications. Number one, read the guidelines carefully, make sure you're eligible, make sure you understand the program's objectives and the deadline. Speak to me if you have questions about your eligibility. Every program is different, and sometimes from year to year, there are changes to grant programs. Subtle changes and nuanced understanding can make a big difference to your application. Give yourself time, especially to gather those materials. As I mentioned, support material is really important for this application. Make sure that you have the right support material, that you have all of your contributors' CVs and bios, and anything that you may need to submit your application. Some people find it helpful to draft, edit, and save your writing in a separate document. You can cut and paste your writing into the fields when it's ready. That said, be sure that you are aware of the word count limits. You don't want to lose some of your text because it's more words than what's allowed. With that in mind, use clear and direct language. Begin with a succinct summary of your project. Get to the crux of things and step back and look at it again and think to yourself, is there anything that I have said that is confusing or unclear? Use your time and space in your grant application to tell us about the details of your project and its impact and importance. Get feedback. Ask a friend to read a draft, especially someone who maybe is outside of your organization, who doesn't know your program. They're someone who is going to be able to say, hey, this is confusing to me, or this didn't make sense. Follow instructions, complete all fields, and triple check your grant. If there's time, if you're able to submit a draft in the next don't submit a draft. If you're able to put a draft into the portal in the next couple of weeks, you may reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you. If I have time, I will be happy to look at your grant and provide feedback. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to do so, but if there's enough time and there isn't an overwhelming need, I'm happy to take a look at grants and give you some broad strokes feedback, especially about things that were unclear or areas where you might be able to give more information. Next, I just wanted to let people know about some upcoming events that you may be interested in. Our partners at Neighborhood Arts Network are running their Newcomer Week virtual edition. It's next week, May 24th to 28th. I think the writing here is probably too small for anyone to see exactly the sessions that are here, but trust me when I say that it's going to be a fantastic event. And if you just go to neighborhoodartsnetwork.org, you'll be able to find all the information about the Newcomer Week. Before we wrap up today, there are some frequently asked questions that we get a lot about this program that I thought that I would just briefly talk about. And I'm going to just go back here. And then at the end, I'm going to do a really quick review. It's my understanding that we've had quite a lot of people join the session late, so I just want to make sure that I answer some of the really essential questions. So I was an artist. Here are the frequently asked questions that we get a lot. I was an artist in my home country. I've been in Toronto for 4 years, and I have an application pending for permanent residency as a refugee claimant. Am I eligible to apply? So this would be related to artists that organizations are hoping to work with in preparation for this program. And yes, this is a unique opportunity that the Toronto Arts Council has recognized. We are the first funding body to accept applicants from people seeking permanent resident status and protected person status. So you may be required to provide documentation after you submit your application. But for the most part, if organizations are hoping to work with artists whose applications are still in process, that is allowed in this program. With regards to collaborative projects and collectives, are all applicants required to be residents of Toronto? No. As I mentioned, not all members of a collective who are participating in a Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program must be residents, but a majority of the collective must be residents. So if you only have 2 people in your collective, yes, you would both need to reside in Toronto. That's also true for your lead artists. Artists who are part of your project need to either be residents in Toronto or working primarily in Toronto to fulfill the project. So organizations that aren't based in Toronto but have opened a Toronto office. Satellite offices do not necessarily make an organization eligible for funding. If an organization has a regional office here in the city of Toronto, they need to have been in operation for at least a year. We won't accept post office box numbers as evidence of an office location. My organization is based in Toronto, but our project is taking place outside of Toronto. Can we apply? No. The project for which the funding is requested must take place in the city of Toronto. Can I include staffing fees in our budget for for staff in my organization who are working on the project? This is one we get a lot. And the answer is no. Funding for this program cannot be used to support an organization's ongoing staff or faculty salary. If a portion of a permanent staff or administrative resource is going to be dedicated to the project, you can estimate the value of these resources and include a detailed breakdown in the project as an in-kind revenue. Also, if you have associate artists who are part of your organization on project per project basis, and you are interested in engaging them as a lead artist, that may be eligible, and you should connect with me about it prior to applying. Can I fund parts of an existing project? So yes, it is possible to fund one or more activities within your project or initiative. This grant may cover up to 100% of your project costs, but it doesn't have to. So if you've been running this initiative at your organization for a number of years, but you've had funding elsewhere, you can still apply for funding from this program for that. Can I use this funding to purchase equipment for my project? No. So capital projects, building purchases, renovation, those kinds of things are not allowed under this. Costs related to equipment purchases and activities occurring outside of the city of Toronto may not be covered. So touring, travel, etc., are not eligible for this program. Some other items, film, video production, archiving, publishing, awards and award ceremony, art therapy, fundraising events and projects, and deficit reductions are not covered by these grants. So my role as a program manager is to facilitate the application projects. And this includes advising individuals or organizations about how to apply, and ensuring that applications meet the funding criteria and facilitating the assessment project. I also attend arts events and participate in outreach initiatives to publicize the grant programs, but I do not make funding decisions directly. The assessment process, operates by a peer review or committee, depending. Generally, for this program, it is done by a peer review assessment panel. After reading all of the grant applications after the deadline, I will assemble a committee who will meet and discuss the applications. They will score and award grant applications in a rigorous process that is facilitated by me. The discussions that occur during assessment are kept confidential. However, after the application process and the notification, if you have questions about your application, you may reach out to me for feedback, and I'm happy to respond and let you know broadly how you did and what the committee had to say about your application. Looks like we've got a couple of questions. So, Emile, I'm a program support officer with Unisphere Canada. We work with newcomer immigrants and refugees by offering business loans and micro lending support programs to those who want to be entrepreneurs. Community members worked with their past to start art enterprises, journeys in jewelry making, card making. Wow, that sounds like an amazing program. I'd probably need to know a little bit more about you and specifically about how Unisphere Canada operates. Are you a nonprofit organization? And you'd probably, yes, we are. Okay. It's possible. Why don't we set up an opportunity to have a chat about it? I think one of the things that just in the brief description that you've given that concerns me is that I don't necessarily see those roles for lead artists. Typically, programs that are funded through this program will be led by newcomer artists offered to a newcomer community. So as with the example that I gave previously with the Arab Community Center of Toronto, there we had 2 lead artists, one specializing in film, one specializing in photography, providing workshops to 10 newcomer youth. I think that your program sounds amazing, but I don't know if there is a position in this for professional artists. And that's one of the things that's really important in this project, or in this funding stream, is opportunities for professional artists. Looks like there's maybe great opportunity for community members, but I think where we might have some trouble with this one would be in those lead artist roles. But it's not to say it's not possible, it just might be that we should connect about it. So please feel free to send me an email and we can absolutely do that. My email is the best way to reach me, and I'm going to put it right into the chat. I think it's also important that we review very briefly the sections of the application. We ask for a project description, which asks you to summarize your project and describe its vision artistically. Also asks you to outline the artistic community objectives, provide a work plan, and describe the community that's being engaged. In the budget information, you will fill out a table, and that's where you'll show proposed revenue. Excuse me. Thought I was going to sneeze. Proposed revenue as well as your expenses. You will also need to include a supplementary budget, which will break down any donated goods and services, as well as your projected artist fees. Support material, as I mentioned, is a critical component for this application. All applicants are required to submit an example of the lead artist's recent work that's relevant to the project. At least one example should be from the past 2 years. Previously funded applicants should submit new support material. We receive a lot of applications to this program, and peer assessors who are reviewing applications will usually only spend 3 or 4 minutes per application looking at support material. So your submitted material may not be seen in its full length, and you may want to provide timestamps in your description if there are particular sections that you hope reviewers will watch or look at. You can upload your media files to the Smart Simple portal. If you are providing a link, please be sure that access is not restricted, or provide the password that panelists will need to view material. Also, make sure you can find a list of acceptable file types on our website in the guidelines. Please review and make sure that you have everything you need and that you're able to upload in the correct formats. Triple check your application, give yourself lots of time. And if you have questions about your application or the project in general, again, please feel free to reach out to me by email. I'm going to just check the chat one more time. Does not look like we have any additional questions, but I want to give everybody just a couple more minutes in case anyone does want to throw a question into the chat. Now is the time. Please ask away if you have any questions. If we do not have any questions, I'd like to thank Amy, Anissa and Kimberly, and Tamaj, our support staff who have been helping us behind the scenes. And thank you all for attending. I do hope that you'll reach out to me about your projects and consider applying to the Newcomer and Refugee Arts Engagement Program.